Thrilled to welcome Symphony 3 to the Local Government News Roundup family. If you're a local council, you know how challenging it can be to manage data across all your different systems. That's where Symphony 3 comes in. They've developed Smart Glue, a platform that integrates over 55 council systems, automating data flow without the need for manual work. It turns confusion into simplicity. With Smart Glue, councils save time, reduce errors and empower staff to focus on what really matters. Their clients see a real difference, up to 20% boost in productivity, with savings of over $30,000 per integration every year. Symphony 3 helps councils work smarter, faster and more efficiently, all while better supporting the communities they serve. A dismissive response to a group of councils' concerns. A council's zero-tolerance stand on harassment. Negative social media prompts a policy review. A mayor backs his GM and staff. An extremely embarrassed veteran councillor charged with drink driving. A so-called gag policy withdrawn. And local government targeted in a DOGE-style spending review in Florida. All of that and more just ahead on Australia's #1 local government podcast. Hello, Chris Eddy here with another edition of the Local Government News Roundup, brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association, the national broadcaster on all things local government, with support from Symphony 3, simple, connected customer experiences. Fergal Coleman from Symphony 3 drops in later this episode for a chat about his recent tour of local governments in New Zealand. The Mayor of Indigo Shire, Sophie Price, says the Victorian Health Minister has finally responded to a letter sent by her council, along with Alpine and Tawong, 6 months ago. The letter raised community concerns about the planned redevelopment of Albury Hospital, a plan Councillor Price described as suboptimal. She said the Minister was dismissive of the Council's concerns and failed to address any of the substantive issues raised. Councillor Price will join fellow mayors and councillors and community members on the steps of the Victorian Parliament on Wednesday to present a united front on the issue. Campaspe Shire Council has issued a strong zero-tolerance statement against harassment of council staff and their families following a concerning incident in the community. The Shepparton News reports that the move followed an incident where a council officer's parent was approached at their private residence by a community member regarding the proposed Wilf Cox Pavilion redevelopment in Kyabram. CEO Pauline Gordon said the protective stance extends to families of employees, volunteers and councillors, ensuring their protection from any form of abuse or harassment. Councillor Rob Amos described the incident as totally out of line, while Mayor Daniel Mackerel urged community members to follow proper procedures when engaging with council. The council has unanimously voted to develop a formal policy addressing the concerns. Moonee Valley's Mayor Ava Adams has welcomed the announcement of more federal funding for Melbourne Airport Rail. Councillor Adams has backed Brimbank's Rail Before Runway campaign and urged both the state and federal governments to move ahead on construction quickly. The project is expected to deliver a new station local to Airport West and Keilor East, linking more of the city's residents to the rail network for the first time. Bull Shire Council says it's advised the organisers of the Esoteric Music Festival, scheduled for later this week in Donald, to cancel the event. Council officers have recommended refusal of a planning permit because of significant health and safety concerns. Organisers applied for a new 10-year permit last year, and the council says it did not receive satisfactory responses to requests for required information. The safety concerns follow an outbreak of shigellosis that affected more than 250 attendees at last year's event. Newport's controversial level crossing removal project is under new scrutiny after revelations that Hobsons Bay Council staff were asked to sign confidentiality agreements to access project information. The Age reported that the council's infrastructure director Matthew Irving refused to sign, believing the information did not need to be confidential. Other employees reportedly received similar requests. The $370 million project would permanently close Champion Road, which residents oppose as it would divide their community. The council has now limited direct meetings with the level crossing removal project team, requiring written communication instead. Project officials have defended the confidentiality agreements as standard practice during planning. Geelong's Mayor, Stretch Contell OAM, has made a pitch for bipartisan political support for an extension of the Geelong Ring Road to the Bellarine ahead of the upcoming federal election. A business case has been completed for the road, identified as a key infrastructure project in Victoria's Big Build, but it requires federal and state funding commitments. Mayor Contell said the extension would reduce travel times to the Bellarine, support rail connections and help remove trucks from central Geelong. The state government has launched Plan for Victoria, a 30-year blueprint for how the state will support its growing population, including in regional areas. A key element of the plan includes developing regional growth boundaries for Geelong, Ballarat and Bendigo to manage outward sprawl and encourage more homes in town centres. The boundaries will help preserve agricultural land and natural resources while directing development to areas with existing infrastructure and services. The MAV says it's encouraged by the plan, particularly the state taking on a stronger coordination role in flood mapping and a streamlined planning scheme amendment process. The peak body says it will continue to advocate for separate plans for metropolitan Melbourne and Victoria's distinct regions and rural areas. And in breaking news this morning, the Herald Sun and the Age report on the expected release of structure plans for suburbs around 6 suburban rail loop east stations. The plans for Cheltenham, Clayton, Glen Waverley, Burwood, Monash and Box Hill reportedly allow for 20-storey towers around each station and between 6 and 10 storeys in surrounding streets. Some council briefs for you. Strathbogie Shire has received Heritage Victoria approval to demolish and restore Chinaman's Bridge in Nagambie. The council plans to preserve its historical significance through interpretation strategies while addressing safety concerns. The project has an expected completion timeline of up to 4 years. Latrobe City has endorsed a federal election strategy focusing on 10 key priorities to secure investment for job creation and economic diversification. Frankston has released a draft affordable housing policy to address the projected need for over 8,000 affordable homes by 2036, identifying 3 key roles for the council as a supply enabler, advocate and partner. And Ian Gray AM, a distinguished legal professional with extensive experience in judicial roles and community advocacy, is set to chair Port Phillip Council's Community Safety Roundtable in mid-March. The roundtable will bring together key stakeholders to address safety challenges, explore best practices and develop recommendations for improving community safety and public amenity. Some extra council briefs this morning. At Whittlesea, the council has endorsed planning changes to facilitate the Beveridge Intermodal Precinct, a transformative freight and logistics hub expected to inject $2.5 billion annually into the state economy. Construction is set to begin this year. Gannawarra Shire Council has awarded a $270,000 contract for a comprehensive study of Kerang's drainage infrastructure and to develop an urban stormwater management plan. Mayor Garner Smith said the move is in response to flash flooding events that occurred during Christmas 2023 and early January 2024. And the Thompson Road and Berwick-Cranbourne Road intersection will be upgraded with $41.75 million from the federal government and an additional $5.69 million from the City of Casey. The council continues to advocate for further road improvements, including the Thompsons Road extension to Pakenham and upgrades along the Clyde Road corridor. This is the Local Government News Roundup for Monday, the 3rd of March, edition number 434, brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association, which is bringing people from across the sector together tomorrow in Melbourne at the Lyceum Club for the launch of the first ever VLGA Victorian Councillor Census, an event you don't want to miss. Find the details on the VLGA website. It's not too late. And thank you for support for the podcast goes to Symphony 3, Simple Connected Customer Experiences. Fergal Coleman from Symphony 3 is joining me in just a little while as he's just returned from a whirlwind tour of local governments across New Zealand. Let's swing into our New South Wales report now, and Liverpool City Council is reviewing its media policy in response to increasing negative online posts targeting councillors and staff. The behaviour has given rise to concerns about well-being and professional reputation. The council unanimously approved motions to update the policy to align with current laws on workplace safety, online bullying and defamation, while also implementing regular training on responsible media engagement. The City of Sydney is urging the state government to improve enforcement of short-term rental accommodation regulations. The Daily Telegraph reported that the council wants to prevent property owners from evading the 180-day cap and to create incentives for long-term rentals. It believes addressing the issues could potentially unlock approximately 5,000 properties for the long-term rental market in Sydney, helping to alleviate the housing affordability crisis. The Mayor of Clarence Valley Council, Ray Smith, has publicly backed General Manager Laura Black and her staff amid ongoing criticism. The Mayor and councillors have issued a statement expressing full support for the administration. The statement is in response to constant allegations of mismanagement from what the Mayor describes as a small handful of people, allegations which he and fellow councillors firmly refute. Mayor Smith emphasised that a cooperative relationship between councillors and staff is essential for community progress and reaffirmed their commitment to serving residents hand in hand with the General Manager. Ms Black said the statement was greatly appreciated by staff. Shoalhaven City Council says it's made significant progress towards its cost-saving targets, with $1.7 million in savings achieved during the October to December quarter. The savings have come primarily from job vacancy management, amounting to $1.6 million. The council's projected annual deficit has been reduced from $31.7 million to $20.3 million. Wingecarribee Shire Council has condemned what it calls unlawful industrial action by USU, according to Radio 2ST. It says maintaining essential services will continue despite potential disruptions occurring between last Thursday and today, Monday. The council has disputed claims about its workplace culture, highlighting improved staff retention rates, career advancement opportunities and ongoing efforts to create a positive work environment. An extraordinary meeting of Lismore City Council last week was temporarily adjourned after councillors engaged in personal verbal attacks, according to the Lismore app. The meeting was called to deal with 4 rescission motions lodged after the last council meeting. All of those motions were defeated. And Northern Beaches Council says its pioneering Know the Code e-bike safety campaign has established a new benchmark for government-led initiatives and significantly influenced the recommendations of the New South Wales Parliamentary Inquiry into e-mobility. The campaign's success in promoting a culture of safety and respect among e-bike users has not only catalysed policy changes, but also inspired other Australian councils to adopt similar approaches to addressing e-bike safety concerns. And now to Queensland, where our thoughts are with everyone as Tropical Cyclone Alfred is on a predicted path towards the southeast Queensland coast and could become the first cyclone to cross the state's southern coast in half a century. Brisbane bus drivers called off a strike on Friday afternoon after reaching an in-principle pay agreement with the City Council. The Sydney Morning Herald reported that the parties had landed on a 7.35% deal with a pay rise of around $5,000 for many drivers. The agreement followed strike action by drivers earlier in the week and library and call centre staff on Thursday. From the Courier Mail on the weekend, a report that veteran Gold Coast City Councillor Peter Young has been charged with drink driving and speeding. It's alleged that Councillor Young was pulled over for speeding and returned a positive roadside breath test. He's been issued with a notice to appear. Councillor Young has issued letters of apology to colleagues and the public, saying he's extremely embarrassed about the incident. Tensions have reportedly eased at Ipswich as controversial plans to potentially limit Mayor Teresa Harding's media spokesperson role have been withdrawn. Councillor Paul Tully has removed his motion, which critics claimed would have gagged the Mayor from speaking to media on major issues. The Courier Mail reported the council has instead unanimously agreed to discuss potential changes to its media policy in a closed-door meeting led by the council's chief executive. Toowoomba's Station Street CBD car park is being reconfigured to accommodate a 75-unit affordable housing development on land purchased from the council in 2022. The changes will reduce the number of parking spaces in the area, but the council says it shouldn't significantly impact parking availability, as the affected area typically operates at just 25 to 45% capacity. And Cairns Regional Council has outlined its federal election priorities, with a primary focus on securing funding for trunk infrastructure in the Mount Peter Southern Growth Corridor to enable the development of 18,500 new dwellings. The council is also seeking confirmation of an $87.5 million water security commitment and support for smaller community projects, including upgrades to Muddy's Playground and the Red Arrow track. More news in brief. The Mayor of Tamworth, Russell Webb, and the Senior Manager will visit Nashville, Tennessee in June on a 4-day delegation. The two cities are regarded as global hubs of country music and have a Sister Cities Protocol agreement. The Council of Mayors of South East Queensland has welcomed an announcement of federal government support for a Brisbane Metro business case. A reallocation of $50 million will investigate proposed metro extensions to Castledean, Springwood and Capalaba and the Brisbane Airport. And a supplementary election will be held for Tumby Bay Council in South Australia to fill a vacancy in the seat of Area Councillor. Nominations have opened and will close at 12 noon on Thursday the 13th of March. The election has been triggered by the resignation of Christian Kotz in January due to work commitments. And just by the way, that Tumby Bay supplementary election is one of 6 currently on foot in South Australia, including 2 to be determined this week, one each in the city of Unley and in Tea Tree Gully. To Western Australia, the Shire of Esperance has committed to a $26 million Myrup waste management facility project that will provide integrated waste services for the region over the next 30 plus years. The Shire says its commitment follows comprehensive research and planning. The facility will consolidate services at a centralised location while addressing the imminent closure of the Wiley Bay landfill. Yahoo News reports that residents of the Shire of Augusta-Margaret River have erupted at their local council, claiming not enough is being done to manage the yearly influx of backpackers and travellers setting up camp illegally throughout the region. One resident described the situation as Groundhog Day, with the same issues of illegal camping, waste disposal and bushfire risks seemingly catching authorities by surprise each year. The council has responded by doubling ranger patrols and issuing reminders about responsible tourism, but locals argue the measures are ineffective. The situation highlights the growing tensions between tourism-dependent economies and the local communities that bear the impacts of increasing visitor numbers. And the City of Mandurah Council has voted to proceed with a Western Foreshore commercial development that will include a microbrewery, a mini golf course and a chocolate factory. 91.7 The Wave reported that there was some community opposition to the decision, which was made at the council's first live-streamed meeting. The project now moves forward to state government processes for land transaction approval. I was thrilled very recently to welcome Symphony 3 on board as a supporting sponsor of the Local Government News Roundup. And you might have noticed if you follow Fergal Coleman on LinkedIn, he's just been in New Zealand looking at what's happening over there and obviously looking to see how Symphony 3 can help. So I wanted to find out how that went. Fergal, co-founder of Symphony 3, great to have you here on the Roundup.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for the invite to come on. And look, delighted to be becoming a sponsor. We've been following your podcast for the last while, so delighted to be involved. And happy to talk about New Zealand. Myself and our CEO Thomas Hines. We travelled about. We reckon we did about 1,800 k's in 2 weeks, travelling up and down the North Island, visiting clients, potential clients, partners, and seeing some of the stunning landscape while we were there as well.
I'm going to say tough work if you can get it. I saw some of those pictures. Funnily enough, you mentioned following the podcast for a while. As this goes to where we're in the week of the 4th anniversary of the Local Government News Roundup. Believe it or not, we're now 4 years of producing these episodes every week.
Yeah, great. And look, I think it's important. Philosophically, Chris, you probably would have heard this, but we're very committed to the sector. We believe in collaboration and sharing, and but part of our proselytizing over in New Zealand was the same story. You know, councils should be sharing code, sharing forms, sharing integration connectors, and sharing thoughts and ideas. And that was really kind of what drove our trip over there at the highest level.
I want to talk about your Smart Glue product in a moment, because I know that's going through an update at the moment. But let's just focus on what you observed in New Zealand. How was your impression of how the sector is travelling? Because I think there's been a lot of change, hasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not no expert on New Zealand. My wife is a New Zealander, having said that, so I've spent a lot of time over there. But I think at the very highest level, I think New Zealand is doing it tough. You know, we spent a fair bit of our time in Wellington, which is obviously the administrative capital, and you could tell that that they're going through a recession there, and that's filtering down into local government. That was probably one of the big things that came at us quite early. Other than that, I think a lot of the challenges are the same. And look, I guess things are tough enough in Victoria as well, with rate capping and a state government that's heavily in debt, but probably worse in New Zealand still than here. Getting skills is really difficult, particularly for the smaller councils. So we're in the integration and technical space. Very hard, particularly for the smaller councils, to attract and retain people. And that came out. We picked up our first client, which is a small council called Harafanua, which is about an hour outside Wellington. So we went there and we were on a round table with the team there, and they invited some of the other councils in the vicinity to come and have a yarn. So, the same themes pop up all over the place. You've got a community that's demanding better services and better digital services. You've got no money to do stuff, and it's very hard to find the skills to do it. So we're busily working, and Smart Glue is about delivering an offering that helps councils integrate their systems and supports them as they do it.
Yeah. So you mentioned the similarities. I know there's some differences too, because those councils there are very involved in water, aren't they? Which in Victoria is not the case. Some other parts of Australia are, of course. How does that impact the service offering that you can provide to councils?
Oh, look, we do a little bit so we don't just obviously deliver our offering in Victoria. We're Australia wide, so we do some work with some of the water divisions. Actually, Singleton Council is a client of ours, so we're working up there. My understanding in New Zealand was that they were breaking the water away from the councils, but now that has been reversed with the new government coming to power over the last 18 months or so. That's still to play out, is my understanding, but it's going to put enormous pressure on the councils over there. Is it an opportunity for us to help? Yeah, of course it is, because they're going to have systems and there's going to be data. There's going to be assets that have to be maintained using, systems out in the field. So, of course, technology has a part to play.
Yeah. Are you in every state of Australia with clients?
We've done work in not every state yet. Yep. So, people who know us on the podcast in Victoria will probably know we've been around since 2011. We've kind of driven the business forward and grown the business a lot over the last 2 years. So we've branched out certainly into New South Wales, working with quite a few councils up there. We've done a bit of work in Queensland. We've done a little bit of work in WA. So we've got somebody on the ground over there as a GM. Tassie and South Australia and NT, we're still to do.
Still to come.
We're talking to a few of the councils there for sure.
And I imagine Smart Glue is the product that most councils are probably working with you on now. And there's an update in the works, or is it out?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of change, we brought a new CTO on board probably about 18 months ago, Shaker Vanka. He's come from Ascetic, which of course will be well known to many of your, as a software business, to many of your listeners, and really rebuilt our product from the ground up. We've been doing integration since 2014, but our philosophy now is to bring all those tools into a portal and make everything really visible to councils so they can see all the integrations they've got between their systems in a simple interface. They can monitor those integrations so they know what's working, and if there's an issue, they'll get an alert automatically. And if they do have the in-house expertise, they can actually go and build some of their own integrations themselves. So that's been really well received. Version, we're calling it Smart Glue 2.0. We just did a launch webinar yesterday. And yeah, really been well liked by our existing clients and of course plenty of the people that we've shown it to over the last 2 weeks, both here and in New Zealand.
Well, what do you say to those CEOs or GMs or chief technical officers that are listening that have legacy systems and would love to have the sort of integration you're talking about, but just think it's too expensive and too complicated?
Look, that's a great question, and we can talk about everything going into the cloud, but even AWS, who are the biggest cloud provider in the world, I think they still say that 80% of payloads and systems are still on-prem, and certainly that's still playing out in the local government space. You've got to integrate, so things are going to go to the cloud. In reality, there's going to be, it doesn't matter whether it's on-prem, in Cloud A, Cloud B, Cloud C, but if you've got all these systems that don't speak to each other, you've got inefficiencies. You've got people doing manual handling. You've got end-to-end processes that are elongated, that are taking weeks, that could be done in days. So you've got to address it. I think maybe a few years ago, councils addressed it in a big way and maybe bit off too much. We certainly think that incremental is the way to go, and look, our pricing is done accordingly without plugging ourselves too much. But our philosophy is to make it easy for people to get on board, to start doing one or two integrations. Get one integration between a couple of systems running. That will flush out your processes, your skills, your data. So data is one of the major challenges that just isn't going away. We're doing a lot of work around AI at the moment, Chris, as you might know as well, if you've been watching our LinkedIn. There's one school of thought that thinks, AI is going to it's going to do everything for us. It'll clean the data for us. I'd love to say that that's true. I think the biggest challenge that councils are going to have with AI is going to be integrating their data. So APIs, and they're still going to need integration solutions. And beneath that, they're going to have clean data. That's not going away. It might make it a bit easier, but if your data is not complete and it's not correct, how do you expect AI to give you answers that isn't hallucinated or made up?
It's the old garbage in, garbage out principle, isn't it?
As simple as that. Yeah. And look, I did a presentation to 8 Victorian CEOs last week around, we talked about AI, and that was my message. Data has always been a major challenge. It continues to be. If I was a CIO or a CEO, I'd be worried more about my data than almost the systems that it sits in.
All right, Fergal, great to catch up, and all the best with Smart Glue too. If there's anyone listening that wants to start the conversation about how you can perhaps help their council on their journey, how do they go about that?
Yeah, if you find me on LinkedIn, I'm on there, of course, Fergal Coleman, or just visit our website, symphony3.com. Always happy to have a chat. The other thing we're doing, Chris, and this is for the sector, we like to give back. We've released a few white papers, so feel free to, those resources are available to anyone in the sector, where we've got this notion of a citizen improvement value, which helps people measure the impacts on their digital initiatives. And then the other thing we run around are roundtables, so AI roundtables. That's an open invitation to councils. So we're gathering councils together once a month to talk about their experiences with AI. Next one is next Friday. We've got somebody from the OVIC joining us to talk about privacy and data considerations. So open invitation. Find me on LinkedIn or visit the website.
Fantastic. Thanks for your support for the podcast too, Fergal. Great to have you on board, and all the best.
Delighted to be involved.
Time to wrap things up now with our global roundup for today, starting with some stories from BBC News, which reports that 2 Liberal Democrat councillors in Hull have defected to join the independent group after refusing to support increasing council tax and rent bills for the 3rd consecutive year. The defection has reduced the Liberal Democrats' council majority to just 1, with the party now holding 29 seats compared to Labor's 25 and the independent group's 3. Reform UK has secured its 2nd seat on Norfolk's Breckland District Council, with Scott Hussey winning 54% of the vote in a by-election previously held by the Conservatives. BBC News said that the electoral victory, along with a previous councillor who defected from the Tories, represents growing momentum for Reform UK in the region, with party representatives calling it just the beginning of their political expansion. And multiple Scottish councils have approved council tax increases of up to 13% for the 2025-26 financial year, following the lifting of a nationwide freeze. Clackmannanshire is implementing the highest confirmed rise at 13%, and Orkney is proposing up to 15%. Local authorities say the increases are necessary to safeguard services after years of restricted funding, despite the Scottish Government providing an additional £1 billion in funding for councils in the upcoming budget. To the US, and in Florida, the Governor Ron DeSantis has announced a new initiative targeting what he calls wasteful spending across the state, including in local government. The Governor's Florida DOGE task force, modelled after Donald Trump's federal program, will conduct audits of municipalities and counties throughout Florida. NPR News reported that Mr DeSantis has signalled an intent to scrutinise local government budgets, particularly focusing on property tax increases. The Governor stated that many local entities have opted to increase their own budgets and even subject their citizens to higher taxes to pay for these spending habits. The audit initiative would require legislative approval, though Mr DeSantis expressed confidence that lawmakers would support the measure. In Massachusetts, the Inspector General has called on Everett City Council to recover approximately $180,000 in longevity payments made to Mayor Carlo DeMaria between 2016 and 2021. Inspector General Jeffrey Shapiro has found the payments were improper, according to reporting from the Boston Globe. DeMaria has denied wrongdoing and contested the findings, which he says are unsupported and flawed, while the City Council President Stephanie Martins has suggested he should step down. She's characterised the situation as a clear intent and an organised effort to defraud residents for personal gain. The New Zealand government has announced key changes to infrastructure funding to support housing growth, including replacing development contributions with a more flexible development levy system that allows councils to recover infrastructure costs more effectively. Radio New Zealand reported the changes aim to overcome funding challenges that have left ratepayers covering infrastructure costs instead of beneficiaries, with the goal of making it commercially viable to build new houses while reducing land banking. The new program is split into 3 pillars: freeing up land for development and removing unnecessary planning barriers, improving infrastructure funding and financing to support growth, and providing incentives for communities and councils to support growth. Wanganui Deputy Mayor Helen Craig will not contest elections later this year after 12 years on the council. Fellow long-serving councillor Charlie Anderson is also stepping down, according to a New Zealand Herald report. 8 of the district's 13 current council members have confirmed they will stand again in October. And Auckland Council is launching a new AI-powered digital assistant called Ask Auckland Council that will help citizens more easily access council information and services. The assistant has been developed in partnership with Google Cloud and Deloitte at no cost to ratepayers. It aims to streamline the council's customer service experience for over 1.5 million annual inquiries and will eventually support multiple languages. That's the latest from the Roundup, edition number 434, recorded on the 3rd of March 2025. If you have comments or feedback or story suggestions, you can send me an email to lgweeklynews@gmail.com. More information about this episode, including story links, can be found at lgnewsroundup.com. The podcast is brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association, the national broadcaster on all things local government, with support from Symphony 3, simple, connected customer experiences. And thank you to the many of you who help make this podcast possible by supporting us through a monthly subscription. Support starts at $3 per month, less than $5 Australian, and you can cancel your subscription at any time. Details on the website or in your podcast player. The Local Government News Roundup is recorded in the city of Greater Geelong, Victoria, on the land of the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. Until next time, thanks so much for listening, and bye for now. A councillor's commitment to community doesn't stop when their time as an elected representative ends. In recognition of this and to strengthen its ongoing support for former councillors, the VLGA has launched an alumni program open to anyone who has held an elected position in local government. By becoming a VLGA alumnus, former councillors will have access to VLGA programs and special alumni networking events, as well as the opportunity to participate in forums and share key learnings and insights to inform sector advocacy. You'll be kept up to date on local government news and be able to participate in VLGA events and professional development opportunities at a special VLGA alumni member rate. To find out more about this exciting opportunity, visit www.vlga.org.au.